Hello, this is a recording of the Creepypasta Why I Don't Go to Camp Anymore by ROFLkorean originally. This version is by me, James. I've edited it somewhat, and I hope you enjoy. I've been attending Camp Rockwater for about 4 years by now. I loved it there, being able to see some new faces, getting to do fun and exciting activities. My favourite part had to be the river rope swing. I never wanted to leave that swing once I got on it. I was so excited to be back, partially because I was getting older now and it would be my last year that I could go. Anyway, summer finally came and it was time to head to camp. When I reached camp after a 4-hour car ride, I was so excited. It was happily nostalgic, coming back to one of my favourite places. First things first, my mother had to take me into the lodge to get signed in. When we got into the lodge, there were a lot of people there, but not as many as I'd expected. We waited in line until it was our turn to sign up. Before we handed in any papers, though, the tired-looking lady at the table told us that there had been some strange things recently. Strange things happening in the forest at the edge of the camp. Honestly, I just ignored her. My mother helped me lug my suitcases to the cabin. When we reached it, I was happy to see some of my old friends from previous years. Kyle, one of my long-time camp friends, was sitting in the corner, making his bed. Jacob, another good friend, was kneeling on the floor, taking his clothes out of the bag. And who could forget about Brad, who was putting things in the wardrobe, including tennis rackets and golf clubs. As for the other two boys, I had no idea who they were, but they seemed like nice guys and we got along well. Transpires they were brothers, their names Brandon and Nathaniel, and, it being their first year, they were understandably nervous. It was another hour before our cabin leader arrived. When he came in, he stood there and looked at us with a gloomy face. He spoke, trying to sound cheerful. "Hi guys, I'm Michael, your cabin leader for the next 2 weeks. I'm sure we're all going to have a great time, but before we do anything, I have to tell you that a few things have changed. We're going to need to be a bit more cautious due to the unusual things that have been happening." We were all a little uneasy after hearing this, but we wouldn't let that stop us from having the best summer we possibly could. The day went on as normal. We introduced ourselves, played some cards in our cabin, went outside and played football in an open part of the gardens. We went to the mess hall to eat, and came back to the cabin to sleep. It did seem a little odd that there were only 6 cabins full of people. Usually there are around 30. Anyway, the next day when we woke up, it was raining, heavily. The sound of the rain smacking against the metal roofs of the cabin echoed off into the distance. The camp leader was nowhere to be found. We kids sat around the middle of the cabin and played cards, waiting for the cabin leader to appear. Being the fearless young adventurers we thought we were, we started talking about some ghost stories that we'd heard around the camp. Some of them seemed completely stupid, but others were, well, scary. Beyond the cabins, there was a large forest. In the forest, there were some obstacle courses. The swing I so enjoyed, the chapel, and the river. It was another hour before our cabin leader arrived. When he came in, he stood there and looked at us with a gloomy face. He spoke, trying to sound cheerful. "Hi guys, I'm Michael, your cabin leader for the next 2 weeks. I'm sure we're all going to have a great time, but before we do anything, I have to tell you that a few things have changed. We're going to need to be a bit more cautious due to the unusual things that have been happening." We were all a little uneasy after hearing this, but we wouldn't let that stop us from having the best summer we possibly could. The day went on as normal. We introduced ourselves, played some cards in our cabin, went outside and played football in an open part of the gardens. We went to the mess hall to eat, and came back to the cabin to sleep. It did seem a little odd that there were only 6 cabins full of people. Usually there are around 30. Anyway, the next day when we woke up, it was raining, heavily. The sound of the rain smacking against the metal roofs of the cabin echoed off into the distance. The camp leader was nowhere to be found. We kids sat around the middle of the cabin and played cards, waiting for the cabin leader to appear. Being the fearless young adventurers we thought we were, we started talking about some ghost stories that we'd heard around the camp. Some of them seemed completely stupid, but others were, well, scary. Beyond the cabins, there was a large forest. In the forest, there were some obstacle courses. The swing I so enjoyed, the chapel, and the river. There was one more thing in the woods that no one really knew much about because, well, it was so far off. The original Camp Rockwater cabins. There were only a few of the older leaders that knew about them and how to get to them. Supposedly, back in the early 1900s, not long after the camp was first established, 2 kids got into a fight in their cabins. Their friends dragged them apart, and they both went to sleep, but that night, one boy killed the other in his sleep. He had apparently taken a heavy rock from outside and dropped it on the other boy's head, crushing it. Legend has it that the spectral remains of the boy who was killed still lurk around the old campground and chapel. The boy could be sometimes seen crying at the back of the chapel. Some even said they went to the cabins and saw his tearful little face peeking out from one of the windows. At this point, everyone in our cabin was really scared. I swear Brad was going to have a panic attack. We all jumped as our cabin leader came rushing in through the cabin door. He told us that we needed to pack our things and go to the lodge as soon as possible. We would be calling our parents in the morning to tell them to pick us up. We walked all the way from our cabin to the lodge in the pouring rain, completely drenching our things. When we got there, only 4 other cabins sat waiting in the main room. As I was sitting next to the fireplace with my cabin mates, I overheard the leaders talking quietly about what was going on. Someone whispered that all of cabin 6 had gone missing while returning from chapel. Later that night, I got up and quietly roused my friends. I wanted to go and find out what had happened in the woods. Though they were very hesitant, they still agreed to tag along with me. We grabbed a few torches, snuck past the cabin leaders who were sleeping near the exit, and got outside. It was still raining, but it was pitch black. Still, that wasn't nearly enough to stop us from heading over into the forest. When we finally reached the mouth of the woods, Brad and Jake both froze, gazing into the woods, fear shining in their eyes. I couldn't see anything. It didn't look like any of the others could. I asked Brad and Jake what was wrong, but without a word they turned and fled towards the gardens, no doubt planning to run back to the lodge through the shortcut. Kyle, Brandon, Nathaniel and myself stayed, though we were all shaken. We walked slowly through the thin path towards the chapel, every now and then tripping on roots or uprooted trees, but still we kept going. We could see the chapel ahead of us, but something felt wrong. It was quiet. The rain had stopped. There was no wind, nor any kind of animal in sight. As we walked cautiously up to the chapel, Brandon, who was carrying one of the torches, just began screaming. He span around and ran as fast as his legs could carry him back towards the camp, and dropped his torch in doing so. The light was shining towards the chapel, and through one of the illuminated windows we saw a face of a child, crying. We screamed in terror and followed Brandon, who had already vanished into the darkness towards the camp. In our fear we lost all sense of direction and any idea of where we were. We came upon the ravine that led down to the river. A small black figure blocked our path. Our only way out was the ravine itself. Me, Nathaniel and Kyle began scrambling down the bank. Kyle was the first to the bottom, but he slipped and landed on his backside, his torch illuminating a figure lying only meters away. It was Brandon. He lay in the mud, his head smashed in, blood and brains soaking the soft earth. It seemed at first that he had slipped and hit himself in a rock, but when I saw what had really killed him, all of what little colour remained in my face drained like the blood at my feet. A large rock lay just a foot from Brandon's head, caked in a mixture of mud, leaves, and the dark sanguine of Brandon's blood. Fearing for our very lives, we ran through the ravine. We were halfway down. We could feel the sweat falling into our eyes as if it was from an ocean. There it was again, the figure of a little boy standing at the end of the ravine. I can only guess that he wanted to play a game with us, but I had no intention of finding out the truth. I told everyone just to keep running. I looked behind me and saw that Nathaniel had disappeared, completely gone into the black of the night. Kyle and I saw the old stairs coming up on our left that led back up to the rear of the camp. When we were almost at the top of the stairs, we heard the child saying, "We can play with the rocks." We didn't stop to look back, though. We ran all the way to the lodge. When we finally stumbled in through the door, all of the cabin leaders were awake. 3 other cabins had left to investigate what was happening in the forest. They'd all disappeared. All of them. Kyle spoke up. He'd barely said anything all night until now. I saw the boy. He just wanted to play a game with us. Years have passed since that night. Carl spent months in counselling for the mental trauma. The camp was shut down and demolished soon after. Jake and Brad were found buried under the chapel after they demolished it. Their bodies were mutilated, their hands sliced off and put into a small chest across from them, their legs, cut off as well, folded across their torsos, their heads crushed under rocks. As for the other 3 cabins of kids, nobody ever found out what happened to them. Not a trace. Perhaps the little boy did get someone to play games with. Forever. Thank you, and good night. Sleep well.